Hello and welcome to Question Time. I'm Benga Ashiru. For close to 2 decades, one of the biggest challenges of successive administrations has been that of tackling the nagging, hydra-headed problems of Nigeria's power sector. What happens to the power sector roadmap? With allegations of gross violations of the power purchase agreement, is the reform plan still viable? Perhaps with yet another daggers drawn between the distribution companies and the federal government over the regulation of the metering system. Where do we go from here? Send us your comments on our social media platforms. Our guest in this edition is the Minister of State 2 for Power, Works and Housing, Alhaji Suleiman Hassan. In spite of the huge investment in Nigeria's power sector, why are Nigerians still groaning under unsteady power supply? Join us in this interview.
Yes, true. A lot of investments before now have gone into power. The sincerity in those investments and the ability of government to follow up these investments are why we are here today. When the president assumed office, he promised Nigerians incremental power supply. We have seen that. He promised stable power. We have seen that.
You said you've seen the light, and I'm actually wondering that where is the light? Who has actually seen the light? It seems the light is only being seen by the policymakers, the regulators, because Nigerians are still groaning under lack of power supply.
You see, what you have not seen, you have seen incremental power. We have gone from less than 3,000 megawatts to about 7,000 megawatts. We have seen stable power, so to speak. What we have not seen, which I may agree with you, is uninterrupted power, which is our destination. And we are surely on track. Because, like I said, we came up from less than 3,000 to 7,000 megawatts of power. So the generation is okay. The transmission is okay. Where we have our weakest link is in the distribution. And in the distribution network, government is now again focusing on the distribution companies that are now in private hands, so to speak, to make sure that they also get their acts together. What we have on ground is actually there are some degraded power assets of the distribution companies that were not actually factored in the initial acquisition. So the capital outlay that distribution companies did not take fact of these degraded power assets. That is what we are contending with now. And again, the numbers of consumers that are coming on stream without actually being factored into the calculation of distribution companies.
Now, do you think the power purchase agreement needs to be reviewed? Because there seems to be a lot of controversy and a lot of lack of flow in the power supply chain.
It's not the issue of power purchase agreement being reviewed. It is the issue of the distributing company being able to deliver power to the ultimate consumer. That is where we have our weakest link, like I told you. You can transmit as much as what is generated, 7,000 megawatts, but a lot of power gets stranded. Like the other time we were saying, we have like 2,000 megawatts getting stranded, not reaching the distributors. One, because either the sensors of the distribution company did not capture people that are consuming. In other words, there's what we call power theft. People consuming electricity without paying for it, so they are not really on the radar of the distribution company. So those powers are lost. Some other power bill loss, again, is not metered. The estimated billing, the monies may not actually come back to the distributing companies. They also have their own problems, distributing companies. They have their own problems. They don't collect all the monies that they are supposed to collect from the end user. Why? Because they are not metered. Two, because they are not also factored into it. Because if you live in a rural community, one person may be metered, but 10 people may be getting power from that same supply source. To the distributing company, he doesn't know that that power is going to a consumer, but he still have to pay for it ultimately.
You talked about power theft, and that brings to mind the recent report that just in 2018 alone, 10 billion naira has been lost in this quarter. And what is responsible for that?
That is why a deliberate attempt is being made to get every consumer metered by either a distribution company or another franchise that is being contemplated. Regulations are being rolled out now by the NEC, the regulatory agency, so that we can have a different arm doing the metering for consumers.
Do you think the issue of the policy on the prepaid meter would work with the discos protesting vehemently and threatening legal action? Do you think the federal government would cross this hurdle?
The essence of government is to make things a lot easier for citizenry. So we will look at all there is in the framework that allows us to do that, discuss with the distribution companies, know their own limits, know their own mandates within what was privatized to them, and government will act in the best interest of the citizenry. We all have what was given to us as a government. The distribution company will look at what was given to them within the context of the contracts, within the context of the privatization clauses that are in there, and within our own mandate as a government to see if we have to go to court. Yes, we all have our grounds for taking actions, and we are not afraid of going to court, because if our actions is within the confines of our mandate as a government, we're not afraid of going to court.